So under logistic subsystem, we spoke about physical flow, then we spoke about business logistics, then we spoke about material logistic, and we spoke about physical distribution. And we were discussing the decision that we take under physical distribution, which has been put up in this particular slide. Next up we have uh, yes, before physical distribution, there before we go further, there are quite a few things um, that are concerned with physical distribution. That is cost of physical distribution that we have to speak of. Now, what is the cost involved here? Or why is it important that we know the cost of physical distribution? Now, the importance of physical distribution cost, it can always be calculated, measured by looking at the share the physical distribution has on the sales price of the product that are given to the final consumers or the end users whom we call as. Now, production cost, it actually refers to the cost price of production. So, what does this cost include normally? Normally, whenever we speak about cost production, it includes the cost of raw materials that are being used, the cost of semi-finished products that are being used, and when we speak about this marketing cost, it refers to the total expenditure by the manufacturer and the retailer as well. It may have inventory cost or expenses, uh, are the interest costs which are related to the capital which have been included in the inventory. Now, transportation cost is also existing. Now, this transportation cost refers to the external transport, which happens between manufacturer, maybe if at all there is retailer and wholesaler. And it also includes costs such as warehouse costs, which is related to the available space that is there, or normally it shall be calculated on the square meter basis or square foot, and it can be for available for storage. So this material handling cost, it relates to both storing goods in stock and order picking. So internal transport, it refers to transport of goods inside the warehouse, transport of goods in the depots, maybe of both manufacturer and distributor. Now there are other costs like costs of the administration. It is also considered in computation of this physical distribution cost. Now, not only that, the manufacturers, they normally divide the material management into what we can call as purchasing logistics and production logistics. So, what are this? Now, when we tell about purchasing logistics, it includes the way how things are controlled in the flow of goods and also the accompanying flow of data that happens from the suppliers of raw materials and manufacturers of semi-finished products to the start of the production process. Up until that point, it is called as purchasing logistics. And therefore, naturally, a distribution company also has to deal with purchasing logistics, in which case it concerns, the supply of finished products. So, that is where we can tell, call supply logistic to be purchasing logistic. Now, through along this chapter, we have been, discussing logistic mostly in terms of forward flow from, source to destination. Now, think for instance of how a glass is made from sand and it ends up in a customer's hand. That is from sand to hand, if we want to tell. However, recent environmental development, they have been forcing logistics to pay equal interest for the return flow of used products and also packaging materials. Now, this reverse flow or return flow is called as reverse logistics. Now, many products and packages, it can be recycled normally in the primary process, and thereby it creates a link to purchasing logistic. So, it is always suggested that a fine tune that is present in the flow of goods uh, is that a function which can be shared among all this sub-logistic system. That is to tell, we saw so many sub-logistic system. Now, in purchasing logistic, bringing tuning, it is focused on the agreements that happens with the third parties for obtaining goods as well as the actual ordering and acquisition. So, the material management, it consists the planning and support of the flow of the inbound goods, which is up to delivery of the finished products. Then there is distribution logistic, uh, which takes over final delivery according to the wishes of the customers. And we are speaking about reverse logistic. So in reverse logistic, the focus is on the return flow of the complete cycle with a new emphasis on the waste prevention. The environmental aspects are the one things which are playing an increasingly important role in logistic nowadays. So see, it is not that returning of the product is only called as the reverse logistic. Now this reverse logistic, it can be for reuse, it can be for repair, it can be for remanufacture or part fabrication. That is to tell, um, reuse. The example that we have taken in our earlier session, maybe the Coke that comes in the glass bottle. Now once after using that, the bottle shall be delivered back for repacking, reusing. Or the same what happens with the LPG gas cylinder. Once after it is used for the domestic purpose or any purpose, once after the cylinder is finished, it shall be sent back for reusing. Or the same happens with the oxygen tanks or cylinders as well. Now, reverse logistic can be for repair. Maybe you have warranty, guarantee. Based on that, there might be some kind of repair that is necessary. You will be sending that. Remanufacturing. Now, if maybe you have used newspaper, you might be sending back the newspaper. It might be used for breaking down the paper and manufacturing some other kind of paper. Now, you might have observed the rough book that we get. The rough book which are brown in color and costs above 10 rupees for 200 pages. Now, that paper, it is a remanufactured paper. Now you might have seen the cans, maybe the 5 liter cans, the ones that comes in white color and the ones that comes in either blue or black color. Now the white color plastic cans, they are manufactured for the first time. Now the black color cans and the blue color cans, they are being manufactured from some kind of reused plastics. Now we use dairy product, especially the milk. It comes in sachets of 500 ml or 1000 ml. Now that plastic we definitely give back and they reuse it, remanufacture it. Then sometimes it can also be done for part fabrications. So that is how reverse logistics are being enormously used in today's business world. And also attached to this we have environmental concern which are to be taken care of. Now we shall see logistic cost. Now what are these costs? In terms of supply chain management, if we have to speak, what are this? The costs of the logistic activities are something, or what we can tell. These are the financial resources or the money. Now money, if we tell, it is in terms of the words of a layman. So we shall take up the word financial resources. So the cost of the logistic activities are nothing but the financial resources that are consumed by the company when the company takes up all the works of logistic. Now, what is the main thing about this cost? Whenever we hear the word cost, maybe in accounting terms, maybe in terms of cost management, maybe in terms of inventory management, the same is for logistic. This cost, it is all divided into fixed and variable cost. Now, what you can see over the slide is they have put up uh, some of the costs, and under each cost category they have given example for fixed cost and variable cost. But before we discuss about this, what are fixed costs? Fixed costs are something which are going to be fixed irrespective of the fact the number of items that are being produced. Now even for 0 items produced and up until a certain greater extent, the fixed cost is going to remain the same. What are variable costs? Variable costs represent all those costs which increases or which varies with each additional output that is being produced. Now that is in brief what a fixed cost is, what a variable cost is all about. And note down this point that fixed cost, it is fixed for the whole or the entire sum is fixed. Okay, but then depending upon how much has been produced, when we split it up, the fixed cost shall be changing. That is, the fixed cost may be 5,000. And when a company produces 100 units of a product, then the fixed cost for each unit produced shall be 5. If at all the company produces 200 units, then the fixed cost for 200 products produced shall be coming down to how much? 2.5 rupees per unit that has been produced. So the number increases, the fixed cost decreases. To be specific, with the changing number of output, the fixed cost, there is a change for the items that are being produced. Now, variable cost, what is the nature of it? The variable cost as a whole, it varies with the number of output that is being produced. But then for each item, the variable cost shall be fixed. And most of the time, it is always a mixture of fixed and variable cost is what you can see. Now, there has been some of the costs that has been mentioned, that is storage cost, the operational management cost, stock out cost, transportation cost, plant and equipment cost. Now, the following, what has been put up, and along with this logistic cost elements, it can build up the total logistic cost. So first we shall see the storage cost. What is storage cost? Storage cost is concerned with the warehousing, uh, or maintaining a warehouse. It includes maybe insurance policies, the office costs that are included in that. Now the storage cost, it will increase as the number of depots or warehousing will increase, because of the simple reason that there will be need for more stock coverage, more store space that is necessary, and also for managing more management is absolutely becomes necessary. Now you have operational management costs. Operational management cost speaks about all those costs which are necessary for managing the operations that are being done in between the logistics. The example have been mentioned in your slide. It can be administrative cost, the loading and unloading cost, uh, stock controlling, the packing, or if at all there are any kind of loss, all those are sorry, I guess I missed the example. Yes. Now loss of sale, loss of customer and loss of image, they are example for stock out cost, not for operational management cost. Stock out costs are nothing but that is the loss that happens. Now sometimes these losses, it can be evitable, sometimes it can happen because of mistake also. Then they have spoken about transport costs. Now other than this also there are some of the costs like that of as that has been mentioned here. First one is storage cost, which we already spoke of. Then we have the delivery cost. So we are speaking about logistic. What again then delivery? Now this delivery cost, it will be concerning with the secondary transport. That is still maybe the cost of delivery from the depot to the consumer. Now once again, the greater the number of depots, the lesser is the secondary mileage and the delivery cost. Because the more number of depots are there, it simply means that it might be nearer to the customer. Then the third one that we have is trunking cost. Now this is the primary transport cost that we see in the supply of products, especially in the bulk to depots from the central finished goods warehouse or production points. And as the number of depots increases, definitely this cost will also increases. Then we have inventory cost. Now the capital cost, service cost, risk cost and system cost are the example for inventory holding costs. Now what is this capital cost? It is the cost of physical stock. Now this is the financing charge, which is the current cost of capital that a company has to bear. The service cost, it represents the stock management and also the insurance cost. And we have a risk cost. Now this risk cost, it occurs through maybe deterioration of stock, uh, damage, and also maybe because of obsolescence of the stock. And we have system stock. Now this cost, it represents a variety of information or communication that ranges from the order processing to load assembly lists. So now we shall speak about models in logistic management. Now maybe there are a lot, but each one is brief and is very simple in nature. First one we are having is forecasting models. Now as the name suggests, all this model, they allow prediction of demand. What demand is necessary, especially they forecast or they predict the demand on past data or different other parameters which are independently available. Normally they enable better planning by taking into consideration the lead time which is necessary for response. The second one that we have is mathematical programming model. Now normally under this there are three models, that is location model, allocation model and distribution network models. Now let us speak about the first one, that is location model. Now normally these models, they help in planning the optimal location of plants or the optimal location of warehouses. Especially they take into consideration the inbound and the outbound transportation cost and also infrastructure costs at the location. Now such models, they can be normally solved as an integral program or sometimes they can also be solved as linear programs. Then we have allocation model. So as the name suggests, under allocation model, these models, they help in allocating the commodities from source to destination, especially in a multi-source and multi-destination environment. That is to tell, maybe a particular product which is manufactured in 15 plants and is distributed through 30 warehouses. In such case, it can, this allocation models can be used for optimum allocation. So the cost considered for optimization includes costs such as production cost, transportation cost, warehousing cost. So, but then this model, it has some limitations also, or rather than telling it limitations, it is the constraints. So the constrictions can be demand capacity, route restrictions, and any other things that comes in the way. Then the third one that is there under mathematical programming model is distribution network design. So now these models, they are usually comprehensive in nature, which is deciding between 2, 3, or even 4 stage distribution networks. Now location of warehouses, and they break bulk points and sometimes even the transportation mode choice. So the model helps to optimize the total distribution cost, including transportation, warehousing, handling, and also the inventory. Now, the third one that we can speak of is the inventory model. Now, inventory, it plays a key role in logistic management. The inventories which are directly affected due to outbound logistics are the finished goods inventory, or could be pipeline inventory, the primary ones, the warehousing inventory, and also retail inventory. So to speak about this, uh, normally under inventory models, there shall be trade off between inventory and other decision, such as the inventory versus transportation cost, or inventory versus stock out cost, or the inventory versus stoppage and material handling cost. So these are included under inventory models. Then we have routing models. Now these routing models, they allow optimal routing on a transportation network, especially from the given source to a destination. Now the simplest model would be built such that it can find the shortest path for the problem that is existing. So that is routing model in brief. Then we have modeling techniques. Now, the use of modeling techniques is important to companies, especially which are deciding upon their new logistic network. Now, the various modeling techniques, they can allow companies to look at a comparison of the functioning, the cost efficiency, and customer service efficiency of the various logistic networks that are being proposed. Now, companies can look at the various modeling techniques and decide which one can offer them the best of insights or analysis into the network optioning. Then we have optimization modeling. Now the optimization modeling, this particular method of knowing the logistic management, it is derived from the mathematical procedure, the precise mathematical procedures which are able to give out the best solution, or when we speak in terms of management, the best refers to the optimum. So such mathematical models which can give optimum solution, which is based on the formula, mathematical formula that are being used, are called as optimization modeling. And remember, this model, it is definitely based only on mathematical formula. That is to tell, there is no place at all for subjectivity in this kind of input model. So the optimization model, it looks at data, such as the level of customer service that can be obtained, the number and location of maybe distribution centers, the number of manufacturing plants, the number of distribution centers that are being assigned to manufacturing plants, and the inventories that probably has to be maintained. Now, if I have to give example, one optimization model that is being used for logistic network is the model which uses linear programming, or LPP, that we have discussed already. Now, this is particularly, it is useful for linking the supply and the demand limitations of manufacturing plants or the distribution centers, and also the market areas. Then we have simulation models. Now the simulation model, it is defined as, as if you know the meaning of simulation, you understand it better. Now the simulation model, we can define it as, such a model that has been created which is based on real world. Now, when a model has been created, one can perform experiments on such models to see how changes made to the model can affect the overall cost of the logistic network. That is to tell, by changing the constraints on the network, it is possible using a simulation model to see how this particular affects the cost effectiveness of the overall network in question. Now, one thing that is noteworthy here is that for simulation model, for them to be effective, one has to collect significant amount of data, especially that we are speaking of logistic. Here the information has to be on transportation, and also be on warehousing, the labor costs, material handling, and also on inventory levels. Now, yes, we are doing logistic, but why all this? The information on all this is necessary so that when somebody makes changes to the constraints, the model accurately reflect the changes. Now, however, the changes to simulation model, it will not produce the optimum logistic network uh, as produced by maybe the optimization model. Now it will just reflect or evaluate the changes that were made to the model. Now if optimization is model is better than simulation model, then why use simulation model at all? We have optimization modeling, right? But then this type of model, it is very useful when companies have made general decision on the network, and maybe they want to see what the overall effect of any changes would be. In such a case, simulation model would be helpful. Then we have the last one, that is heuristic model. Now, similar to the simulation model, the heuristic models, they do not generate the optimum solution for the logistic network. Now, normally a heuristic model, it is used to reduce a large problem to more manageable size, something which can be handled by the business. Now, at this point, it becomes necessary that we have to understand that heuristic models, they do not guarantee a solution, and that a number of heuristic model, they may give contradict solution, uh, and a lot of time they can give different answers also. See, different answers and contradictory solutions are two different things. Contradictory solutions are something which are exactly opposite of the two, or exactly opposite of one another. Different answers simply tells that there are different opinions. But then, even after having these things, this heuristic model, it can still be useful to the overall creation of logistic network. Now you know what is rule of thumb. So this heuristic model, they are often referred to rule of thumb, which can be useful in creating a logistic network. Now that is to tell, a heuristic model, it can be used to consider the best site for distribution center, which is at least 10 miles from the market area, or 50 miles from a major airport, and maybe more than 300 miles from the next closest distribution center. So when such is the case, such is the information, the heuristic model, it will look at all these areas that fit within the parameters that are being defined, and finds the areas that are best suited. So let us now try to understand, uh, you know, the role of logistics in supply chain. So we have spoken about supply chain management. We have spoken about logistic management. So what is the role of this logistics in supply chain management is something that we'll have to know. So what is this logistic? Now this logistic, it basically connects the source of supply with a source of demand. Or we can also tell that it is something which bridges the gap between the market demand and the capabilities of the supply source. So logistics, it helps in bridging all these gaps. Uh, so to make them invisible at the logistics system, such as maybe the warehousing network, or maybe the transportation network, or the inventory control system and supporting information system, they are put into operation with the objective of delivering the right product at the right place and at the right time with the least cost. Now the logistics system, it has to fulfill the two primary objectives of customer service and cost, which strikes a balance between them. Now, this logistics is something which makes it possible to deliver a product to the customer who is who might be residing anywhere irrespective of its manufacturing location. Now it shall be deployed for making a daily shipment of products manufactured maybe once a week or month, or otherwise sometimes as per the market needs. Something such as maybe the e-commerce that is there nowadays. Now logistics, it facilitates sometimes either a full truckload or shipment once a week, or a part load on a daily as per the requirement of customer. So, this logistic, it fills the gap between that is present between supply and demand. But then, when these gaps tend to be, bigger in number, larger, and if at all there is the risk of dilution of service is high, then can be an integrated system is necessary, so as to make the operation, very much seamless for production and also for information flow. Now, this supply chain management, now it is a process where there is integration, which helps to bridge the gap between the supply and demand. Now, today not only we have physical supply chain, but also we have virtual supply chain, where the cycle of this chain time, it is reduced to zero, or no warehouse exists, or the just in time that we spoke of in our last class. So as this inventory levels, they come to near zero, and the freight is cut down to a minimum through networking. This is an ideal situation, but attempts should be made to achieve this goal. That is to tell, after trading half the path towards the goal, it becomes progressively easier to treat the remaining path and bridge the gap. Now, the supply chain management helps to close this gap by enhancing and then aligning the capabilities through some of the elements such as technology or collaboration and human resource skills. Now, the supply chain that we speak of, now it is backed upon the relationship that is present with the suppliers for performance cycle. Now, there should be a very much strong relationship between with suppliers for reducing this performance cycle, or for quality improvement, or for freight minimization, and maybe for reduction in cost of materials and transactions. Now it emphasizes flexibility in manufacturing capability, especially for producing volumes, and also variety to quickly respond to market demands, irrespective to the time and place limitation. When we speak about distribution, on the distribution side, the supply chain is necessary in order to make products available, at the point of sale or consumption, as and when it is necessary. So as to minimize any kind of loss of sale for non-availability of product. So this channel remembers, requirements that there is reliable and consistent freight movements, that there is full load utilization, that there is cross docking, and also freight consolidation. Now, the supply chain, it tries to understand the demand signals, and thereby profiles the target customer base, so that it can adjust itself for planning and execution of customer requirement, which is in accordance with the desired service level. Now, these logistic capabilities they supplement the supply chain. So, the efficiency and the effectiveness of inventory movement happens across the supply chain. It is largely dependent on the capability of logistic management, and therefore the integration of the supply chain, it cannot be possible uh, without the capability and reliability of the logistic operation. If the elements are to be point of, it is to tell the cost reduction and the customer service enhancement that happens in the supply chain. They are not possible without efficient logistic operations such as warehousing, material handling, or inventory control, or packaging and transportation. Now, in fact, logistic and supply chain management, it cannot be separated from each other. Now, since they are part of the same customer service solution. Now, the logistic operation, it may continue irrespective of whether or not an enterprise follows the supply chain philosophy. Now, inventory movement then needs to take place to bridge the gap between demand and supply chain. So, on the other hand, the success of supply chain is greatly dependent on logistics. So, in a nutshell, what we can tell is logistics is key to the success of supply chain management. The degree of success, it depends upon the level of integration between them and using the enabler, such as information and communication technology. So, I guess we had a discussion of inbound and outbound logistics. Yes. Now, when we speak of logistic, this logistic, it includes inbound logistics and outbound logistics. So, as the name suggests, inbound logistics, you know what supply chain is all about. Now, this inbound logistic, it refers to the sourcing, the expediting, and the receiving of the goods, all those which are coming to the business organization. And on the other hand, the outbound logistic, it is all about warehousing, packaging, and transporting of goods which are moving out of the organization. So, as you can see on the slide, this inbound and outbound logistics, those are very simple topics. So, you have inbound logistics, intra or internal logistics, and outbound logistics. Now you have supplier, the company, and the customer. Now all those transportation that has been used, wherein the goods are brought from the supplier into the organization or the company, that represents inbound logistics. Now whatever transportation or movement of goods happens within the company, now that is intralogistics. And whatever happens between, transportation happens between the company and the customer, it represents outbound logistics. Now, if at all you look into this picture carefully, you might have the idea. Now, the company is one, What can things travel within the company? Is there even anything such as intralogistics? Now, yes, here the picture may be of one house, but take into consideration a large corporation. Maybe the one you can see that is MRPL that is there in Mangalore or the Mangalore Refinery and Petrochemicals Limited. Those who have known, you know how large that particular company is. It has been extended within, acres of land. So maybe their transportation is necessary where things are to be, transported from one plant to another plant. Now that is an example for intra logistics. So this is simple, the inbound and outbound logistic. So now we shall see each one of this. Now what has been put up in the left hand side of your slide, it represents inbound logistics, and what has been put up in the right hand side, it represents outbound logistics. Now, as we discussed earlier, this inbound logistic, it includes the activities that are related to sourcing of the elements, acquiring those, storing those elements, and also delivering the raw materials and maybe the parts that are used to produce the product or service department. Now, this inbound logistic, it is the part and parcel of operation for a firm that is involved in manufacturing business. Now, in very simple terms, this inbound logistic, it is a fundamental activity which normally focuses on buying and scheduling the inflow of materials, tools, and final goods from suppliers to production units and warehouses or retail store. Now, when you see this particular diagram, we can tell that inbound logistic includes all those activities which are essential to make the goods available for especially the operational process in the company. Now, it also includes materials handling, stock control, inspection, and transportation so as to facilitate the production or the market distribution. Now, this inbound logistics, it refers to the internal logistic task and also the activities that the business has to complete in order to operate in the market. Um, Now, you might have heard the terms such as B2B, the B2C. B2B refers to business to business. B2C refers to business to consumer. Now, if we speak in terms of that, this inbound logistic, it usually refers to the logistic operation of companies which operates, fairly upstream, that is from business to business. Now, if I have to speak in terms of supply chain, it involves the relationship with the parties who operate, at the extreme or the upstream that gives business. Now, depending on the business, those parties who operate the upstream, they may vary dramatically in their respective operations. That is to tell, now consider being a car manufacturer. Now, the manufacturer's inbound logistic, it would entail the sourcing of raw material inputs such as sheet, metal, glass, wiring, plastics. Now, how to store the materials in preparation for and during the assembly process, and how to manage the flow of manufactured automobiles that leave the factory. So all this shall be considered. Now from the perspective of the upstream player, the metal foundry which produces the steel metal, the inbound logistic would vary. Now, the inbound logistic operation would include, sourcing raw materials such as maybe metal ores, storing and using the materials in production, and managing the flow of completed products. Now, that is inbound logistics. Now, as against that, on the right hand side, the outbound logistic has been mentioned. Now, as the name, it is the collection, storage, and distribution of final goods and related information flows from the manufacturing plant to the end users. Now, it covers all those activities, that is selecting, organizing, transporting, which are involved in the outflow of merchandise from seller to the buyer. Now, outbound logistic, in the case of tangible item, it can be warehousing, it can be material handling, inspection, it can be transport. But for intangible one, especially for the services, normally this outbound logistics, it is associated with bringing of customer to the service location. Now, comparatively with the inbound logistic, now this outbounding logistic it refers to all those tasks and activities which are involved with moving the product to the end user, such as logistic duties, usually apply to players that operate in the downstream of the supply chain. Downstream are nothing but the last part in the supply chain. So here the tasks such as includes storage of manufactured goods, the transportation of these manufactured goods to the point of sale, and maybe even sometimes shipping and handling is also involved to get certain products to the end users. Now we have taken the auto manufacturer example. Now if you take the same here, the parties who are involved with the outbound logistic of the supply chain would be the wholesaler of these automobiles or the dealers. So the factory operations would be in charge of assuring that the right amount of ordered inventory arrives at the dealer, especially at the given time. So in turn, the dealer would be in charge of coordinating the storage and upkeeping of the vehicles on its lots. So as well as the shipping and handling of vehicles that are ordered by customer that live maybe in different areas. So maybe then telling meaning if you see the difference, it would be far more easier to understand these two. Now, difference between inbound and outbound logistic, it can be compared on the basis of um, first one, the meaning. Now, inbound logistics, it is nothing but it is the influx of raw materials and the parts from the suppliers that is traveled to the manufacturer plant. And up until this part, whatever is being transferred, the transfer is called as inbound logistics. Now, what is outbound logistics? Now, the outward movement of final goods from the company to the end user, it is called as outbound logistics. Now, the inbound logistics, it relates to material management and also procurement of raw materials. Whereas outbound logistics, it is concerned with customer service, it is concerned with channel of distribution. Now, inbound logistics, it focuses on deployment of resources and raw materials within the manufacturing firm. And outbound logistics, there is movement of finished goods or product from business to the final customer. Now, how does interaction happen? In inbound logistics, it happens between supplier and the firm. And in outbound logistic, it happens between the firm and the customer. Now see on the right hand side there is a picture displayed which speaks about supply chain management, logistics and third party logistics. That is to tell, logistics is a part of supply chain management and third party logistics is a part of logistics. And together these two are part of supply chain management. So what is this third party logistics? We shall see in the next slides. So um, this logistics and supply chain, when we speak of, there is supply chain partners. This is something that we have to discuss. Now, the companies, they work with different supply chain partners on the inbound and the outbound side of logistics. Now, the inbound side, it concerns the relationship between the companies and their suppliers, whereas this outbound side deals with how companies get products to their customers. Now, regardless of the source of the destination, the company may work directly with third party distributors on both the side as well. That is to tell, a wholesaler. He might work with a distributor to receive the products from the international supplier, while he might be using uh, his own fleet to deliver goods to their domestic customers. Then one thing that we have to speak here is damage and liability. That is to tell, all these transportation agreements that happens between supplier and customers, it specify who is financially responsible if at all there is damage that happens, or who has to pay the cost of this damage which happens in the transit, maybe at different points. And they shall be discussed definitely in specific. Now there are things such as free on board or FOB shipping terms. It specifies that the recipient or the one on the inbound side of the logistic is the person who is responsible for shipping cost. Now after the ship is loaded onto a transport carrier or when it reaches a specified location. Now then we have that is tools and materials. Now, inbound logistics, it covers anything that company orders from supplier. It might include tools, raw materials, office equipments, in addition to the actual raw materials that are being used. Whereas the outbound logistic, on the other hand, it deals almost exclusively with the end product. Um, the tools, materials, and equipment, they only fall into the outbound category if the company sells them as the main line of business. That is one more point of difference. See, inbound can be anything, even tools, but out can be only those which company exclusively sells. So inbound logistics for furniture manufacture, for example, it can include wood, cloth, materials, glue, nails, and safety glass. While the manufacturer's outbound logistic would only like to cover the finished furniture product. If he starts selling all these parts, then that does not include the outbound logistic for him. Then we have supply chain integration. That is still normally there is vertical integration which occurs when one company acquires or merges with its own suppliers or customers. Now, a vertical integration strategy, it can greatly increase supply chain efficiency and also produce competitive advantage. Now, due to a single source of strategic control over multiple players in the supply chain, a fully integrated supply chain can synchronize both inbound and outbound logistic with automatic ordering and order fulfillment system. That is shared fleet vehicles and drivers and a close cooperation between managers at different companies on pricing agreement, volume contracts, delivery system, and even customer design product. The next thing is we have outsourcing. Now, you might tell that we have already discussed outsourcing, but students, remember the context in which we are speaking. When we spoke about outsourcing uh, in the chapter 2, we spoke about general outsourcing. We said anything that is outsourced. But here, when we are speaking about outsourcing, we are speaking about outsourcing the logistic part. That outsourcing we are speaking. So remember this fact that yes, the meaning may be same, but the context in which we are speaking, it is definitely going to change. So, what did we speak under outsourcing? A lot of things we had discussed. Now, this tells that for organization to survive in today's competitive market, what does companies do? These companies, they have started concentrating mainly on their core competences or the main business, and they are adopting outsourcing as a strategic solution to improve the quality of services, and not only to improve the quality of services but also to reduce the cost of important, but which is as well non-core processes. Now, why are we speaking of this? Now, using what we call as strategic partnerships or the third party logistics, these service providers, they are integrated in logistics. Now, lot of companies all over the world, they have reported gains, such as reduction in logistic cost or logistic assets and reduction in order cycle time. Now, today, it is an accepted trend in the industry to form, a collaborative relationship with the logistics service that is provided for, knowledge-based supply chain, and also integration that resets on IT as backbone. Now, speaking about the outsourcing being, catalyst. Now, this point goes without telling that in today's business, the organization across the world, they are struggling to compete not only for growth but also for their survival as well. Now, the factors which are responsible for uh, this particular point is that the economies all over the world, it is becoming more and more liberalized, and there is a globalization of business, and there is a recessions trends all over in the market. Not only this, what has become in nowadays is that the customer, they have become more demanding, and they are looking more for value added service for prospective supplier, because they want value for the money that they are spending. That is to tell, maybe earlier I had 500 rupees, I wanted to buy a particular product, maybe moisturizing cream. What would I do? I would go to the near store. What are the options available? Based on that, I would be buying it. My demand would be limited to what the store offers. But today, I have 500 rupees, but my demand, it can be, satisfied by anybody in the world because we have e-commerce. I did not settle down to one or two options. I have all the options that is available for me through e-commerce. I can go to any company, I can ask them, to send the product by paying how much it costs. So that is where I seek value for what I am spending. I'm not limiting myself for the two options that is available on store. So, in such a situation, the business organization across the world, you know, once after they have understood their business process, they are also realizing that cost cutting and differentiation in the delivery system are solution to the current problem. Now this can be achieved through outsourcing, the non-core operations to experts in the field and concentrating on the core business areas. Now the expert, they can do the job both cost effectively and efficiently. And hence there is a growing trend observed in the industry today. Is nothing but the hollowing out, we can tell. Outsource, the other word for outsourcing is hollowing out of cooperation. That is, in the large companies, they are increasingly outsourcing the non-core business process and thereby gaining, operating efficiency and effectiveness by engaging the services of experts in that particular field. Now that we are speaking of, you know, logistics in, outsourcing in logistics, what are the benefits of it? Now, in logistics, the operation considerable quantities of materials are required to transport it and also stored at various different locations. Now the raw materials and also the components are to be, maybe sometimes moved over long distance from vendor supply points to the production center. Now this outsourcing, starting from outsourcing of IT and HR functions, Indian corporations have come a long way and have understood the value and also benefits they get from outsourcing such function. But they also feel they do not have the required expertise. Whereas logistics is one of the operations in which the majority of Indian business corporation they do not have expertise. So after the liberalization of our economy in 91, when the Indian companies they started experiencing the competition, outsourcing became a corporate mantra for building the competitiveness. Now, if we observe some of the developed countries, this logistics outsourcing is a trend as as one of the strategic solution to improve quality of services and also reduce the cost of important non-core process. And therefore, such process they are outsourced to logistics service providers. So having a core competency in their area of logistics, the storage service it relates to materials that have to be stored for some time as raw materials and later as finished goods. This tells that finished goods they have to be transported to the point of consumption. Now, as the production and consumption cycle they do never match. Because of this, storage becomes necessary. But the stored inventories they have to be judicially controlled for the carrying cost, which normally can eat up many part of profit of company. So in such cases, this logistics, uh, the service of this provider takes care of all this hassle and ensure the availability of right product at the right place and the right time. So logistic operation, it is a specialized functional area, and the majority of marketing and manufacturing organizations, they have no expertise in it. So the need to outsource operations to the expert in the field has to be taken very much seriously. Now the opportunity cost with the traditional distribution system carries due to the lost time in dealing with maybe multiple vendors, transport, cost and freight agents or freight forwards, or some kind of Troy authority or the custom agents. Now this all are considered when there is transportation between two countries. So these are some major hurdles in companies' overall competences. So as to overcome this hurdle and bring effectiveness and efficiency to the distribution system, outsourcing is something which becomes necessary. Now, as we have already discussed, we can know why outsourcing it becomes critical. First one is it helps and focus on core competencies. The company might be having resource constraints or the cost saving which resulting from better management of the supply chain, or there is cross pollination of better practices or wider geographical coverage. Now, in a huge competitive markets, logistic outsourcing it provides the operational flexibility, to meet the changing needs of the customer. The logistics service can also be, customized for major markets or key accounts. Now, as organization or this organizing the logistic infrastructure in the service provider's responsibility. So the outsourcers need not have to worry about the assets becoming outdated. Now the switching over to a new logistic partner is possible due to changing needs of customers. Uh, the requirement of funds for investment in the transportation fleet, warehouse handling, equipment and storage arrangement is, they are absolutely eliminated, and the responsibility falls on the service provider to create infrastructure. And also one thing that we have to say is that human resource requirement, it is minimized and is limited, not only to coordinating and monitoring the service provider activities. Therefore, all these leading firms they hire the service of experts using the best practice in the outsourced area, and there by hiring service which are available at lower cost. So now speaking about this particular chapter,